Section 28 of the Pirates of Panama, the Buccaneers of America, by A.O. Exquemela. Translated by G.A. Williams. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Dennis Sayers. Chapter 18. Captain Morgan sends canoes and boats to the South Sea. He fires the city of Panama. Robberies and cruelties committed there by the pirates, till their return to the castle of Chagre. Captain Morgan, as soon as he had placed necessary guards at several quarters, within and without the city, commanded 25 men to seize a great boat, which had stuck in the mud of the port, for want of water, at a low tide. The same day, about noon, he caused fire privately to be set to several great edifices of the city, nobody knowing who were the authors thereof, much less on what motives Captain Morgan did it, which are unknown to this day. The fire increased so, that before night the greatest part of the city was in flame. Captain Morgan pretended the Spaniards had done it, perceiving that his own people reflected on him for that action. Many of the Spaniards, and some of the pirates, did what they could either to quench the flame, or by blowing up houses with gunpowder, and pulling down others, to stop it, but in vain, for in less than half an hour it consumed a whole street. All the houses of the city were built with cedar, very curious and magnificent, and richly adorned, especially with hangings and paintings, whereof part were before removed, and another great part were consumed by fire. There were in this city, which is the see of a bishop, 8 monasteries, 7 for men and 1 for women, 2 stately churches, and 1 hospital. The churches and monasteries were all richly adorned with altar pieces and paintings, much gold and silver, and other precious things, all which the ecclesiastics had hidden. Besides which, here were 2,000 houses of magnificent building, the greatest part inhabited by merchants vastly rich. For the rest of less quality, and tradesmen, this city contained 5,000 more. Here were also many stables for the horses and mules that carried the plate of the King of Spain, as well as private men, toward the North Sea. The neighboring fields are full of fertile plantations and pleasant gardens, affording delicious prospects to the inhabitants all the year. The Genoese had in this city a stately house for their trade of negroes. This likewise was by Captain Morgan burnt to the very ground. Besides which building, there were consumed 200 warehouses, and many slaves, who had hid themselves therein, with innumerable sacks of meal, the fire of which continued 4 weeks after it had begun. The greatest part of the pirates still encamped without the city, fearing and expecting the Spaniards would come and fight them anew, it being known they much outnumbered the pirates. This made them keep the field, to preserve their forces united, now much diminished by their losses. Their wounded, which were many, they put into 1 church, which remained standing, the rest being consumed by the fire. Besides these decreases of their men, Captain Morgan had sent a convoy of 150 men to the castle of Chagre, to carry the news of his victory at Panama. They saw often whole troops of Spaniards run to and fro in the fields, which made them suspect their rallying, which they never had the courage to do. In the afternoon, Captain Morgan re-entered the city with his troops, that everyone might take up their lodgings, which now they could hardly find, few houses having escaped the fire. Then they sought very carefully among the ruins and ashes for utensils or plate or gold, that were not quite wasted by the flames, and of such they found no small number, especially in wells and cisterns, where the Spaniards had hid them. Next day Captain Morgan dispatched away 2 troops of 150 men each, stout and well armed, to seek for the inhabitants who were escaped. These, having made several excursions up and down the fields, woods, and mountains adjacent, returned after 2 days, bringing above 200 prisoners, men, women, and slaves. The same day returned also the boat which Captain Morgan had sent to the South Sea, bringing 3 other boats which they had taken. But all these prizes they could willingly have given, and greater labor into the bargain, for 1 galleon, which miraculously escaped, richly laden with all the king's plate, jewels, and other precious goods of the best and richest merchants of Panama, on board which were also the religious women of the nunnery, who had embarked with them all the ornaments of their church, consisting in much gold, plate, and other things of great value. The strength of this galleon was inconsiderable, having only 7 guns, and 10 or 12 muskets, and very ill provided with victuals, necessaries, and fresh water, having no more sails than the uppermost of the mainmast. This account the pirates received from some one who had spoken with 7 mariners belonging to the galleon, who came ashore in the cockboat for fresh water. Hence they concluded they might easily have taken it, had they given her chase, as they should have done; but they were impeded from following this vastly rich prize by their gluttony and drunkenness, having plentifully debauched themselves with several rich wines they found ready, choosing rather to satiate their appetites than to lay hold on such huge advantage, since this only prize would have been of far greater value than all they got at Panama and the places thereabout. Next day, repenting of their negligence, being weary of their vices and debaucheries, they set forth another boat, well armed, to pursue with all speed the said galleon, but in vain, the Spaniards who were on board having had intelligence of their own danger 1 or 2 days before, while the pirates were cruising so near them; whereupon they fled to places more remote and unknown. The pirates found, in the ports of the island of Tavoga and Tavogilla, several boats laden with very good merchandise, all which they took and brought to Panama, where they made an exact relation of all that had passed to Captain Morgan. The prisoners confirmed what the pirates said, adding, that they undoubtedly knew where the galleon might then be, but that it was very probable they had been relieved before now from other places. This stirred up Captain Morgan anew, to send forth all the boats in the port of Panama to seek the said galleon till they could find her. These boats, being in all 4, after 8 days cruising to and fro, and searching several ports and creeks, lost all hopes of finding her. Hereupon they returned to Tavoga and Tavogilla. Here they found a reasonable good ship, newly come from Payta, laden with cloth, soap, sugar, and biscuit, with 20,000 pieces of 8. This they instantly seized, without the least resistance, as also a boat which was not far off, on which they laded great part of the merchandises from the ship, with some slaves. With this purchase they returned to Panama, somewhat better satisfied, yet withal much discontented that they could not meet with the galleon. The convoy